Robert White, I'm so glad to be able to count you as a friend. And we've known each other personally for maybe 3 years or something, not very long, but discovering you through Larry Profit, finding out that you've had a dramatic effect on my life over the last, since about 1990, when I first started working with Larry with a company that has done billions and helped millions of people, and being able to participate on such a big scale. And realizing that company wouldn't probably even be here but for you. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because you've been around and you've got to have the satisfaction of affecting the lives of millions of people, and then that ripple effect where you could talk to somebody and you discover the person maybe has had a positive effect on millions of people, but you got to light the match. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things. It's a superpower available to any one of us, where we can dramatically change lives. And I think one of the most fascinating ideas that's been bantered around for a long time, and I don't know how they can even estimate that, but they say that sociologists figure that even the most introverted person realistically has affected over 10,000 lives throughout their lifetime. And then I think a lot of people have done much more than that, and to be anxiously engaged in a business where that's actually the prime directive. And we actually have products and a marketing plan where we can teach people how to teach people to do that, and have this multiplying effect where it literally becomes a superpower to do much good. And that is my turn on. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you got into that. And you've written a really good book talking about three really big things. And I think one of the most important things is just that idea, being awakened to it. And so we have just being awakened, and then realizing that we all have a responsibility that's inescapable. We have influence, and might as well embrace it and be responsible. And then one of the best ways to influence people is, how can we influence somebody? We could run into somebody in a car accident, and that would definitely affect them. But the most important thing is just our mouth. Words are very powerful. So I guess those are the three things that you've written and studied about and teaching people. And yeah, tell us a little bit about you. And you're still in the game, and I appreciate that, and thank you. And I know if people, as they meet you, they're going to be better in a lot of ways. I certainly am.
First of all, thanks for the warm introduction, Dave. And the classic line that I'll use now is, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. That's a little bit overblown, but I'm happy to be with your group and with you. I so enjoy your weekly emails. I think you are, I think, best known as somebody that builds an organization, but you could be in the personal growth training field and win if you aimed in that direction. I know that you are a great example of my experience in network marketing many years ago, and what I learned there and since then in working with Niken and with you, with other people in the industry, is that there's a specific requirement for success in network marketing that's so simple and yet so challenging. And that is, if you find a product that you passionately believe in, like Avini, that really works, that really is a contribution, it really adds to what's possible for us as human beings and realizing our potential. So, great product that you're passionate about, that's number one. Without that, you don't go on to number two or three. But number two is a plan and an organization that supports you. The most obvious is a plan that supports you financially, but there's also a kind of a connection that you need to get with other people doing something similar, so that when those bumps come along in the road, you've got somebody you can call. You got somebody that, even if you want to be a victim for a short time, you can commiserate with, but also someone that people and an organization that you can celebrate with. And I'm starting to see that celebration experience in Avini, in certainly in their annual meeting, but also like in your weekly emails. And I'm guessing that in the calls that you make with your key people, there's a lot of celebration. There's a lot of, hey, things are really exploding here. So, first of all, a product. Secondly, a plan that works and that creates a success environment and support. And then finally, personal growth. If I look at the biggest problem, if I look at things from that perspective that I've seen in network marketing, it's people that come in and think it's going to be easy. And they think it's going to be get rich quick. And you even hear that from prospects because that reputation has traveled. And we all know, anybody that's probably on this call knows that's not true. Yet it's what people hear. And where it comes from, in my experience, and again, I'm not unbiased in this matter. This is a famous one-liner, I think from Will Rogers, said that never ask a barber if you need a haircut. Don't ask me if personal growth is a good idea. But what I've seen in terms of a pattern is people come in thinking it's going to be easier, and they go out and they start blabbing away about the opportunity and the product or whatever, and they start getting some feedback that people don't say yes, and pretty soon what they're doing is they're blaming the company, they're blaming the whole idea, they're blaming their sponsor, and they quit. And okay, so what do you get out of that? You get nothing except being right. That it wasn't me, it was something else. It was my sponsor, it was the company, it was the product, something else. And you miss a golden opportunity. The golden opportunity is to realize that the product's great, the plan is great, the people are great, what's available in terms of training and growth and celebration. It's a life choice that has incredible potential. And you lose that the moment that you start blaming others. One of my experiences in the past, and if we've got people on that are over 50 or 60 years old today, they'll certainly know the name Zig Ziglar. And Ziglar, I knew of him when I was quite young. And you could buy these recordings of him. There was this wild man with this Southern accent, and funny and wise and just all kinds of stuff. And then I was doing a 1 week long sales training program once a month. I took a week away from my distributorship and did a program open to anybody. And the company that sponsored me in doing that surprised me. And it started on Monday morning, Monday through Friday in those days. And Ziglar showed up as a student. And I was so intimidated. I was, I don't know, I'm about 30 years old and starting to have some success, but still doubting myself and still feeling like I was the poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks and without the right education and without the right background, all that stuff running in the head trash. And Zig Ziglar shows up for 5 days as a student in my training. The reason he was there is the company had decided to take what I was doing, what some other people were doing, and have Ziglar create an audio training program that would be more available, where you didn't have to spend 5 days. You could put it on your player. And in those days, this is before streaming existed. And so he was there to find out what we were already teaching, already doing, mold that into what his approach to personal growth. And it was just an incredible 5 days. And by the way, 3 of the 5 days, I was still just intimidated. And he would show up about 3 minutes before the training started every day and leave immediately on a break and disappear. And at the end of the day, he's just gone, never talk to me. And which increased my intimidation, by the way. And finally, on the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. It was starting to affect how I was showing up in the morning. And some issue came up in the training, and I just turned to Zig and I said, Zig, you have a lot of experience in this area. How do you feel about this? And he just took off on a rant. The first thing he had said in 4 days was this incredible piece of content, and done with all of his charm and his enthusiasm and classic Zig Ziglar approach. And I always remember that, first of all, but secondly, that we choose how we show up. And I actually had enough awareness at that time to realize that I was so intimidated that I wasn't showing up at 100% myself. An incredible lesson. That wasn't what he was talking about. It was what was happening inside me. So when I look at people, the biggest problem in network marketing is dropouts. People that come in thinking it's going to be easy, they run into a little bit of resistance, and then what gets in the way is themselves. And that's really my story, Dave. And what I decided I would do this morning is I want to run through a presentation that I gave in China. I spent basically from 2014 to 2020 living and working in Asia. Again, I went back as part of my story, and I did a lot more public speaking than I had done before. And what I learned in China is they have an incredible need to hear history. And it's an advantage, I believe, in terms of building a culture that we have lost in the United States. The number of people that don't know our history is sadly increasing. And yet the history is your foundation. It's not where you want to hang out and you want to go on with your life and go into the future, but knowing your history. And that was the strength of the Chinese. They wanted to know my history. So what I'd like to do, if we can make this work technologically, if you could turn on sharing, I want to share something with the folks. Can you do that, Dave?
Yes.
So let me see if this works here. Ah, it does. I'm hoping that most of our listeners, let's see if we can make this work. All right, if we've done this right, there's a picture of me in action.
That's right. Yeah, go ahead and push play.
Can you give me a
The
moment?
slide up at the top slideshow, I think. And then, yeah, right at the very top, there's a little box that says slideshow. I think you push that and then start. Keep going left. That's straight up. No, not higher. Right there on that line. Now go to the right and you'll see slideshow. Click that. Okay, and then push start. Go back up to the thing and you'll see some boxes and it says start. You'll play up. Yeah. Let's see. There should be where you can expand it completely.
This is me. So when you talk about the journey, this is how it started for me. My father was an entrepreneur. He was also an alcoholic, and with his life was a mess. And what that led to was he was in the drilling business, drilling for oil in West Virginia, where I was born. And he had 5 straight dry holes. And anybody with any kind of experience around that kind of thing knows that's a financial disaster. So this is a picture that would be done with a 1-year-old if you were well off. And we went from there to the 6 of us, my 3 siblings, my mom and my dad, living in basically 2 rooms. And this was our toilet, the classic outdoor John. And so he lost everything. And it affected, when you're a kid, you don't know if you're rich or poor, and it doesn't matter. But I look back on it and I realized that it had a tremendous impact on my father in terms of depression and bad behavior and deepening his alcoholism. And it had a bad experience with my mother, who became, I don't know where it came from. I actually never figured that out, but angry and violent. I was, as a child, basically beaten 2 or 3 times a week until I was 12 years old. So that's my history. This is the only picture I have of my father being sober. He was painting the rough spots on this truck, which is our only form of transportation, with a brush. That's what you do if you have to do that. We rode in the back of that truck all the way from West Virginia to northern Wisconsin, where I actually grew up. We got there when I was 8 years old, and I consider Green Bay, Wisconsin as my home. And one of the things that happened for me is I've looked back, and with the help of some therapists and some training experiences, I learned that my parents didn't do a very good job with me, but the community did. And the reason I mention that is, first of all, as a compliment to Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's more than the Green Bay Packers. It's a community, and it took care of me in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that it took care of me was that I, at 14 years old, started working in radio. Originally as a control engineer, a bunch of things happened that I stepped into, and I took some risks, and I ended up on the air. And the audience at that time for nights and weekends was my peers, teenagers. At that time, there's no iPod, or there's no streaming music, and music is everything to teenagers. That's still true. But what you had was radio, the top 40 shows, and I ran one. And one of the things that led to was, instead of it being the poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks wearing used clothing and all of those kinds of poverty-oriented things, the 300 people in my graduating class chose me as most likely to succeed. And at that time, I was Bob White. And so that's the reference to. And the other guy, Bill Walters, was the big star at that radio station. And they called me the smallest BW. He referred to himself as BW. And we just happened to have the same initials. That's that reference. I then spent the next 10 years after being chosen most likely to succeed. That year, my 17th year, I graduated 6 out of 300. I worked full time, made more money that year than my father ever made. And just all kinds of good, commencement speaker, all those good things. And I spent the next 10 years making everybody wrong. So at 27 years old, 10 years later, I was broke. My little sales business was struggling. I hadn't paid payroll, that kind of really bad stuff. I had 3 heart attacks and had been told I would die by 35. It was inoperable. And I had gotten married and divorced and felt just horribly guilty about it. And I had no idea how to process that, but it dominated my life in many ways at that time. So I was a mess. And a friend of mine, in also in network marketing and very similar business setup as me, went out to California for one of the early human potential training programs, Mind Dynamics, MDI. And he came back from that 4-day experience, and his life changed right in front of me. And he said, you've got to do this training. And of course I said no. And the more I learned about it, the more I knew I didn't want to do it, the more I resisted it. And then they actually brought the training to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so I went to the training, and my whole life changed. Now, it wasn't instant, but what the foundation that got laid in my 4 days of that experience has fueled me through today. It was the single most important 4 days of my life beyond being born. And so that happened, and I got more interested in that work than in my business. I sold my business. I started doing trainings. I moved to New York City, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And one day I get a phone call from the chairman and founder of Mind Dynamics, Alexander Everett. Excuse me. And I became president of Mind Dynamics. I ran the business side of the business for the first 2 years. And for my second 2 years there, I ran around the world setting up Mind Dynamics businesses in Europe and Asia. So that was a big, important part of my history, a lot of learning from Alexander. It's the only time I worked for someone else, really, in my adult life. And from MDI came EST many years ago, but it's now called Landmark Education, a really good program called Actualization, the Psi World, Impact, and the company that I founded, LifeSpring, and many more. Mind Dynamics was like the grandfather of personal growth on a transformational basis, just a piece of history. And then the one country I said no to during my Mind Dynamics days was Japan. So, of course, I ended up moving to Japan. I formed a company called ARC International. Our product was Life Dynamics. That's led to 1,300,000 graduates of these high-impact experiential learning leadership events. This particular picture was taken in Hong Kong on our 10th anniversary in Hong Kong. And the reason people are standing up and turning around is that I made it a habit to never sit backstage if I was making an appearance. I always sat in the audience. So I was in the middle of the audience when they introduced me. And when I stood up, a lot of other people stood up. So anyway, that's that picture, a little peculiarity of mine. When we launched in Japan, I lived in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and China, a total of 23 years on and off. And then in between, I've traveled there a lot. I've been over the Pacific in those big metal tubes a lot. But this is a picture from our first year in Japan. This one, our contribution in Asia. We adapted the training for Asian markets. We stressed local trainers, and that we did a lot of corporate culture change training using that same methodology. The tiny person next to the demonstrating Robert White in this picture, Dave, is Tom Watanabe, a guy you know well. But that's the first training in Japan done with an interpreter who turned out to be the CEO of Nikken eventually. And but that little piece of history, this was the first guest event. We did it in my apartment, and in true Japanese fashion, a lot of people sat on the floor. We didn't have chairs. We had chairs, but not enough for the group. But that's the first guest event that selling our training in Japan. Eventually, we had 7 centers in Japan, 2 in Taiwan, 1 in Hong Kong, 1 in Seoul, 1 in Manila, 1 in Sydney, and 1 illegal one in Guangzhou before they opened up the country. My staff, without my knowledge, opened a center in Guangzhou. So we became Asia's largest training company and the second largest in the world doing this kind of work. That in the early days, I actually paid a visit to China for the 50th birthday of a dear friend and one of our graduates. So this is me and Eric Smulders enjoying a champagne and tuxedo experience on the Great Wall. It's always been one of my favorite memories. So there's that Hong Kong picture again. That's me coming down the aisle to give my little talk. And so I did what entrepreneurs do, what you're doing right now, Dave, which is 24/7 kind of work. We work all the time and we love it. And I did that. But at age 46, a bunch of changes happened in my life. I moved back to the USA after, at that time, 13 consecutive years abroad. And I moved to Aspen, Colorado. I skied 80 days a year. I visited 39 countries. I was on 6 nonprofit boards. I raised 4 great kids. It was an incredible experience to not work all the time. And I did a training for the late John Denver and the board of directors and staff of his nonprofit, WinStar. The picture on the right or on the left, I guess, is at the John Denver Sanctuary in Aspen, one of my favorite places in the world to stop and do prayers of gratitude for that relationship and for everything that John has meant in my life. This is my home in Aspen. Up and behind it is my office. So we had the big house. That's the other side of the house, the actual entrance. This is the view from my office in Aspen, one of my favorite places to dream and scheme and think about my future. I had my own airplane, a vanity, maybe not the best business decision I ever made, but I loved that airplane. I skied a lot and my children grew up on skis. I did not. They out-skied me by the time they were 10 or 12 years old. And so this is my daughter, Megan, and I at Snowmass, Colorado. These are the 4 youngest children just outside of our home in midwinter. The 2 on the right, as you look at it, are my 2 birth daughters, Megan and Alicia, and the 2 on the left are adopted special needs kids with Levi and Emily. They have the same mother, they have different fathers, and they ended up in our family, and it's been a blessing. It's been challenging, difficult. I've learned a lot from it and from them. Here's the other 6 months later, maybe, on the dock at our little pond in Aspen. One of the things that I noticed when I look at this picture, I think this was the last time the girls agreed to be in the same clothes. So, like a day later, I think they went into resistance about that, dressing like that. Fun memory. One of my experiences in my life is I remarried my former wife. This is on the day of the reception with all of my children and the woman I married twice. Again, a favorite picture. This is the ARC International Leadership Team. These are trainers and managers. We got together once a year, and one year we did it in a lot of different places. But one year we did do it in Aspen. So this is an Aspen picture of the top team that of our 240 people, this is about half of them that gathered together once a year. This is probably hard to see, but it's a lot of pictures more recent from my trips back to Asia doing events, and I'd get invited a lot by our company or other companies. I did a lot of corporate work. This is one corporate client where we had about 500 graduates out of their 19,000 people manufacturing company. So we had the entire leadership team from the CEO on down. This is one of those trainings in Hangzhou, China. And so that's a piece of my history. And let's see if I can stop sharing. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Along the way, what made a difference was a shift in mindset. Now, for some reason, wiring, God's grace, take your pick. I started as an entrepreneur when I was 7 or 8 years old. I went door to door and sold greeting cards. I sold magazine subscriptions. I shoveled snow in the winter. I mowed grass in the summer. I had a paper route. The list goes on and on. I got together with some friends once in Aspen, and we got into talking about what was the worst job you ever had. Mine was scraping gum, chewing gum, off the sidewalks at Dairy Queen one summer. But you haven't had a bad job until you're scraping chewing gum in midsummer off the sidewalk. But that particular owner of that Dairy Queen, that was his standard, was that we disappeared the chewing gum. And that was one of my jobs there. A lot of cleaning jobs, actually. But I've always had that desire. And later we did a lot of work on purpose. And so I looked into my own purpose and my pattern over the years. My purpose was very simple as a young person. It was a negative purpose, which is I'll never be poor again. And so I tried a lot of different things. I took a lot of risks. Many of them paid off, some did not. But that commitment. And I know people that have grown up with a lot of abuse and alcoholism and all that stuff who descend into bad behaviors, non-productive behaviors. I know that's a pattern for many people. I went the other way. And by the way, there are a lot of people like me that went another way. It worked out well for me overall. Not like I was always successful. I've made enough mistakes to be unsuccessful also. But that mindset shift made the difference for me. When I found a product that I was excited about, a plan that was rewarding on many different levels, on the financial side, certainly, but also on the personal friendships and deep, abiding connections with people. But the key was that personal growth side of things, to realize that, yeah, I had the background I had. What am I going to do with it? What are the choices I'm going to make? What are the patterns that I need to let go of and step into really being successful, not just dreaming about it, but really attracting the kind of people that are important in any business, but certainly in network marketing. So anyway, that's the subject that I chose for today, Dave. And what I want to encourage our listeners and viewers to do is to raise your hand. And then Dave, if you could go into or to do a chat, at the bottom of your screen is chat, and to go into chat and ask a question. Let's do something that's more valuable to you rather than me assuming what we could get done here today. And then Dave, if you could paraphrase their question and just interrupt me anytime and ask that question, I'll either answer it immediately or I'll put it give me a few minutes later to do that. So I want to talk about what other people have called the rule of three, the number 3. And that is, my 3s are this. We've already done one of them. You need a product, you need a plan, and you need personal growth to be successful in network marketing. The second piece of three came in what we eventually named our company, ARC International, was an acronym for awareness, responsibility, and communication. That you have to wake up. You have to start seeing things in a wider perspective and a deeper perspective to have a higher level of awareness. My former wife called it a greater state of noticing yourself, noticing the people around you, noticing the environment, noticing the economy. We're getting a lot of signals right now that you better be independent. You better have a repeating source of income. So that there's awareness within and awareness without. Secondly, the key to my book, the key to my training, the key to my life is personal responsibility, to own it all, to get off the victim train and step onto the personal accountability train. And then finally, you better develop mastery in communication, certainly spoken, but also in listening, in writing. We communicate with our bodies, with our mouth, with our eyes, with our ears. You better get a mastery level of communication. It's generally not taught in school. I got lucky in getting into radio, where I had a lot of mentors who were outstanding verbal communicators. So I went from the kid with the Appalachian accent that everybody teased me about and got me in a lot of fights to being somebody that could use my voice for good instead of, at that time, for warfare. So that's another threesome. Those of you that were on my previous appearance with Dave know that I have this thing that we've worked out from our graduates, by the way. This is not something we came up with. We noticed it. We took responsibility for communicating it. I'll own that. But it's available online and it's free. It's called the 8 Principles. And so if you want a really good checkup, a really good guideline to success, you can get that free on my website, extraordinarypeople.com, and then sign up for the leadership principles. And you'll get a 28-page document that talks about them, that gives you an opportunity to rate yourself where you are on each of those 8 principles. And then the hint to focus on the 2 or 3 where improvement would change your life. And so you get an opportunity to look in a broader picture of awareness and then focus it down to what you need to work on. And it's bite-sized instead of overwhelming. You'll also get my weekly easing, an extraordinary minute. And so that's where that threesome of awareness, responsibility, and communication come in for me. And then my final thing today, Dave, and then we'll take some questions. And I encourage you to go on the chat, put your question in, and Dave will watch the chat and let me know what your questions are. And I love doing that. The final piece is from my point of view, how to build an organization, how to build a family, how to build anything that's going to include more than one person. And one of those lessons from Zig Ziglar all those years ago, where if you want to be successful, help the maximum number of other people to be successful. And Dave, I know that's a theme of your work for many years. So if you're going to help other people successful, that's another threesome. And those 3 are, first of all, focus. Are you and your team, are you absolutely clear what you're up to this month and this 90-day period? I think goal setting can be great for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. But I think for human beings, our focus is closer to home. And we're less patient than that. Again, living in Asia, they do seem to have a longer timeline in their government, in their families. They talk in terms of 100 years. But Americans generally are not like that. I'm not like that. So what's your focus, personal and for your team? What's their focus for the next 30 days, for the next 90 days, at most this year? We're at a turning point here. We've got another January 1st coming up in a few days. What's your focus? And does everybody have one? Is it clear? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Does it meet the test of being a great goal? The second piece is alignment. And alignment is the interesting question if you think about it. Before you can have alignment, you have to answer the question, alignment to what is it we're aligning to? And I'm a big basketball fan. We've got a team here in Denver that's doing really well. And one of their keys to success is they have an alignment to unselfishness, to their teamwork, and it's working for them. They're number 2 or number 3 in the conference today, with 3 starters not playing, injured. So 3 of the 5 starters are on the bench, and yet they're number 2 or number 3 in the nation because people stepped up. They're part of the team. So the alignment to what is to, again, 3 things, which is alignment to your purpose. Why do you exist? Why are you doing what you're doing? Alignment to your vision. What is the bigger picture? What is it that's so big and so exciting that you can't think of anything else? You don't want to think of anything else. It's compelling to you and compelling to your team. It engages people. And by the way, I want to make $300,000 this year. People don't get aligned to that. It's not compelling to them that you make money. It's an interesting thing. A lot of people think sharing your financial goals is the big thing. It doesn't engage people. What engages people is a life of meaning. So that goes back to your purpose and your vision. What are you up to that's going to engage people? I never get a communication from Dave Johnson that doesn't mention Avini and its benefits. I don't think I've ever had one from you, Dave. I don't know. Am I on track here?
I suppose so. Yeah, it's a great vehicle, and I got to say, Zig Ziglar, he's one of my favorite guys too, and I can highly recommend. There's so much material that is just free, and listen to him every day. He's amazing, and if you want to be successful, he says, hang around successful people. He has a funny idea. He says, how do you get the flu? Well, hang around people that have the flu and you'll get the flu. If you want to be successful, hang around people that are successful. And that truly is one of the greatest shortcuts to change your whole life, is change your environment. Who are you hanging around with? And I think that's one of the big things. We got a vehicle, but we're a group of very thoughtful and dedicated people that really believe in these products and the rightness and the goodness of what we're doing. You hang around that and it just pulls you along. And it just really helps. And momentum is essentially a bunch of people doing the same thing, and you get this multiplying effect. And I think that's one of the big things as far as a leader, is they're momentum creators. And this is just so fun to visit with you. And there are universal principles, and it's just so predictable. And you look at a business, okay, the products work consistently. And so essentially, if you're a leader and you just make this commitment, I'm going to do this, and you keep doing it and doing it, you get better at it because you're doing it, but also the magic of the numbers, the compounding of doing something again and again, and it just becomes a certainty. And so you're brand new in this business, and I love your idea. That's also wonderful is when you first look at this, it looks easy. And we could say it's simple. There's just some basic things, you do it again and again, but it's not easy. And I love the thought that something like Avini is the hardest high pay work you'll ever do, or it's the easiest low pay work you'll ever do, and anything in between, and you just choose. And so you just think, okay, if I'm going to make a really good income, I realize there are no free lunch, and just plan on working and earning what you get out of it, and you can predict your own future by creating it one day at a time, just doing this. And this is all so appropriate because just around the corner is this bright new year 2026 that with planning and doing the right stuff, it could be your best year ever. And so I think this is just really appropriate to be with a master teacher that it's all personal development. As Jim Roney talks about, for things to get better, you got to get better, and to attract good people, you got to be a good person. We need to be really good to attract really good people. And it's just...
Now, who you are, that's a classic line, but who you are is speaking so loudly I can't hear what you're saying. You know, that I grew up in a neighborhood that was literally on the wrong side of the tracks in Green Bay. It was in a very poor neighborhood, and I actually had to walk across railroad tracks to get to school every day. And in that group of friends in that neighborhood, every one of them fell into 2 buckets except me. And I'm serious about this, Dave. It's a sad truth. I have no surviving free friends from that period of my life. They either died in Vietnam or they're in prison. That's just the reality that I've had to accept about that time. And they either died in Vietnam or in a car accident or in a shooting, or they're in prison. That was my neighborhood. And you mentioned that this magic thing called YouTube, you can call up Zig Ziglar and a whole lot, Brian Tracy, and a whole lot of people like that, and for that matter, me, and get a daily or an hourly dose of positive, goal-oriented, life-affirming messages. And Zig had this incredible magnetic personality. There's no way you're not smiling and laughing and having fun watching Ziglar. I'm a more serious kind of conservative person. My family joke about me is I was born in a three-piece suit, and I am a serious person. And maybe for some people that seems to work for them and it's helpful to them. But Ziglar is this ball of fire, and a lot of people are like on YouTube like that. It's free. If you need a pick-me-up, go get one. Find somebody that you enjoy, that you learn from, and that lifts your spirit. It's really important. Dave, I'd like the rest of our time together to be productive for people, whether it's questions that you have or questions that they have, or things you think that might be valuable for the last 10 minutes of our time together.
There's a couple of questions that came up. So one is the magic of a coach, and your basketball team you're talking about that's doing really well. They probably have a really good coach. And so group coaching or one-on-one, what's the best? Yes and yes.
I've made it a life choice for me to not be life coach. I want to do things that reach more people, so I only coach business people today and teams because I want to multiply my efforts. But people call me and ask for suggestions about life coaches. And I do have a lot of experience. We had at one point 70 full-time trainers, incredibly talented people that do some miraculous work. People would ask me about that. My statement about me and being a trainer. One of my secrets to success, is not a secret, and that is I stopped doing trainings very early in the growth of my business. I recruited other people. My gift is in recruiting them, training them, managing them for results. And so of the 70, I once did this, I actually wrote down names and did this. And once again, it was my rule of threes. They fell into three buckets. One group were beginners, but they not beginners, but they had qualified as a trainer, but they're still in that rapid growth phase. And they got more attention from us on a corporate level, and they got observed more often. We watched their numbers more carefully. 1/3 were superstars. They were gifted. They had worked hard at their craft. They were professionally and personally prepared to do brilliant work. And the 1/3 in the middle were people like me, people that were pretty good and get a lot of credit for being brilliant from the audience they're in front of, who are not comparing. The person that's in the room with me is not comparing. A guy named Dennis Becker, I think one of the greatest trainers in the world, who worked for us in 3 countries. And they don't know Dennis, so they think I'm great. But I'm average in our field. Average is pretty good. I acknowledge that, but that's reality. And the question that you have, or that everybody has, is how do you get to at least good? And it's that personal growth thing. Are you working on yourself? And constantly. The scene behind you, the scene behind me is books. In my case, I actually, in the last 5 years, I've given away more books than a lot. At this point in my life, it just feels like the right thing to do. But I keep the ones particularly that have been meaningful to me or that are signed to me. And Dave, what was the essence of your question, this question?
Oh, essentially, I think we'll all agree having a coach makes a big
Ah,
difference. And so
so,
group coaching or one-on-one.
yep. There are things that can get done in a group that cannot be done one-on-one. First of all, that's my bias because you learn from others that are similar to you. And it gets around that automatic rejection we have when somebody targets us and says, you need to make this change. We're resistance machines. My bias is toward group work. On the one-on-one work, the question is, I'm thinking of getting a coach, which I'm always glad to hear, but it's not work that I do right now on a personal growth side or on a general life. I'm having trouble with my wife or husband or my adult kids, or I'm procrastinating and blah, blah, blah. But with executives and with life coaches, I think the first thing is, has your prospective coach been there and done that? Whatever it is that you are up to. If I wanted to get coached right now on network marketing success, guess who I would call? Dave Johnson. Really? He's been there and done that. That gray hair comes from success and failure and learning and growth and disappointment and huge success. And he's been there and done that. If you want to learn how to build any business, I'm pretty good. I've built several and it's been hugely successful. I've had some failures along the way and hopefully learned from them. And in dealing with executive clients right now, there is almost never a problem that they're having that I haven't confronted. So when you're looking for a coach, whether a life coach or a business coach, have they been there and done that? Have they, and then do you connect with them in terms of their energy, their spirit, where they come from? And does it just feel right to you? Because no matter who you choose, by the way, somebody's going to say, I know somebody better. By the way, that's just like your choice of business. I know a better deal. All these people that pretend to want to be helpful and criticizing your choices. But I think look at somebody that's had the experience of actually doing what you want to do, or something very similar to that, building something. The second piece is, do you connect with them? Is there a spirit, a feeling that this is somebody you want to talk to once a week and be real with and tell the truth and really get into it and really get into your most extraordinary possibility? Those are the things that I look for in a coach. I encourage people to get one. If you were repeating a pattern, if you just start saying, geez, I did that again and it didn't work again, what's wrong with me? That's a beginning question. I don't think you should avoid it, but do something about it. You need to interrupt patterns. And I had a pattern of being, I'm going to say, nasty with people, hypercritical. And one of the things I got from that 4-day experience all those years ago is that when I got out, first of all, I didn't change right away. But one thing started happening that was really, I'm not sure if I ever used this word out loud, disquieting. It bothered me. And that is, I started seeing my words go out and land on people and blow them up and cause them to contract and pull away from me, because people don't like to be criticized. So what I found out is, and somebody else came up with this line, I love it. Whatever your greatest strength, when carried too far, can become your greatest weakness. Your greatest strength carried too far is your greatest weakness. So what I learned about me is that I'm a really good critical thinker. I'm really good at making choices. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm not good at, but that's what I'm good at. And analyzing things and figuring out the strengths and weaknesses of an idea, I'm great at that. But when I put voice to that and it lands on people with the wrong tone, the wrong intention, it was forcing people away from me, the very thing you want to go the other direction. And so that was the first step, was seeing my words land on people like missiles. And then the next step was this. And for those of you who aren't watching this that's me clenching my lips together to stop those words in my mouth before they get launched onto people. And my life got better instantly when I had that awareness, took responsibility for it, started communicating in a different way. That's the kind of pattern that a good coach can catch you in and help you through. I'm a big fan of coaching. There are a lot of great ones. Dave has people that are in the business and have migrated, and they love coaching more than running the business. But they did it. They've been there. They've done that. So talk to Dave. He'll give you some leads on people that you can work with individually. Dave and I have talked about doing a team training for his Avini group, and hopefully we'll do that someday.
What's your website again, Robert?
Extraordinarypeople.com. Extraordinarypeople.com. You can sign up for the weekly email and get that 28-page PDF. It's shareable. You can use it for team meetings. You can use it with it's got a lot of different uses over the years. I've rewritten it 20 times over the years. So it's whatever I've learned about success.
Let me read. This is Frank Phelps. He says, the impressive things I take away is that you never quit. When success comes along and you grew, you remembered to remain a humble man. Let's see, your focus and is helping other people grow and what they created to be to serve others. So yeah, that's fun stuff. Never quit. I think one of the things I've had, words are so powerful and stuff, and I've thought I was being clever a couple of times in my long history where somebody called up and says, I'm going to quit. And I says, actually, you can't. And they, yeah, I am. And I said, actually, you'd have to get started in order to quit. And never really got started. But anyway, yeah, I love that visual of your words coming out and falling on people. And hopefully it's soft rain that waters and helps things grow rather than puts people away. And I think that's really good. But,
yes, when I was running a region in the network marketing company that I grew up in, a bunch of things weren't working for me. Again, my personal growth was stalled, and I started out blaming, and that stuff doesn't work. And the vice president of the company for sales came to Milwaukee and sat down with me, and a memorable conversation. I said, "Why are you here?" And he said, "Because the president of the company thinks you're fixin'," he was from the South, "fixin' to quit." F-I-X-I-N. You're fixing to quit. And he was right. And he basically said what you just said in slightly different words, Dave, and that is, you can't quit when you haven't started. Wow.
This is great stuff. We'll have to have you back again. And I think that really is the big secret, is decide what you want to do, becoming aware, what do I want to do with my life? What is my purpose? And hopefully it's a mighty one, because we've all been gifted with so many strengths and just here we are. Let's do it. And responsibility, I love that. You can be a victim or you can be a victor, but you can't be both. And so have responsibility. And then just really get good at communicating and use that in a good way. I understand Hitler was a good communicator, and he could bring crowds to tears, and he moved people, but he moved them the wrong way. And have a noble cause and get really good at it. And I just think, oh my goodness, here we are. And then if you like where your life is going, just keep doing exactly what you're doing. Or here's an opportunity to do a little bit of a reset. Or maybe, okay, I like where I'm going, but how can I make it go faster? It could be just as simple as talking to more people. Add one more call every day. Track how hard am I working? What am I doing? And just get really good at sharing this message with more people. And oh my goodness, the possibilities are endless. And then we're involved in health. We want to be an example of that. What can I do to live longer and live better? And as we get older, all of a sudden those days, we don't take them for granted as much. And to think, this is limited. There's a finite amount. And my last years, do I want them to be healthy and doing good and having fun, or have oxygen tube in my nose and oatmeal spilled on the front and watching reruns or something. What do I want to do with the rest? And I just get so excited about the possibilities of all the things that we've learned and done. We can take that and just compound on that and really have the best year ever. Ordinary. I think John Maxwell talks about, okay, you're going to go out on a date and you think, I want to go to an ordinary restaurant and just eat some ordinary food. Nobody thinks that. They want an extraordinary experience. And the same thing with your life. Do you want an ordinary life or an extraordinary life? And I love your choice on the word. Why not be extraordinary? Decide, hey, I'm not going to be an ordinary distributor. I'm going to be exceptional.
There's a lot of attention paid to sound bites and clips. Look, my study is on leadership. That's my personal thing for myself and for the people that I'm privileged to lead or to coach. It's about, we need more leaders, and we need them at every level of society. And we need it in our families, in our communities, certainly in our companies, and from wherever you are, that you start to model leadership. So currently I study the late Steve Jobs, I study Elon Musk, I study people that are current success stories. But I also study, I spent a whole week in London about 5 years ago, not on business, just for me. And I've been to London many times with Mind Dynamics and personally, and I did it just for me. I spent an entire day in the Churchill Museum because Winston Churchill led during the darkest hours of World War II in Britain and did a leadership job for the ages. I also study, you mentioned Adolf Hitler, and Hitler had incredible leadership qualities. He had moral problems, in my judgment, but you can learn a lot from Hitler, from how to move a crowd. And I'm a severe introvert. I have to wind myself up to get in front of a group and put on, one of my friends call it Robert's dancing monkey show, because people are not interested in how boring you can be, but I can be that. I'm the guy that gets off stage, goes to my hotel room, orders room service, and watches Romanian soccer on ESPN2 all alone. That's how I'm wired. That's inadequate to the future I want to create. So, study leaders. And I study Lao Tzu and Confucius and Jesus Christ and leaders from thousands of years ago, because there's something about that subject that has always been compelling to me, and I see it desperately needed today in our families, in our communities, and in Avini.
Oh, this is fantastic. And I think when you're communicating, don't be boring. That's a good thought right there. Yeah.
Have some fun, put yourself out there, take some risks. Those 8 principles that I mentioned that are in that 28-page document, there's a lot of emphasis on creating into the future. Look, the key to all of our trainings for all of these years has been, anybody that wants to do our kind of work, if you figured this out, I'm going to give you the secret. It's deal with people's past and letting go of blame, shame, regret, guilt, even past success. Letting go of the past, first of all. Secondly, learn to better tell the truth about your current reality. And then finally, if you've done those 2 things, then you can create a future freely chosen. Not what your parents said you were going to be, not what the culture says you're going to be, not what university you went to or didn't go to. If you've dealt with your past and let it go, and so that you're more fully present and that you're telling the truth about what you're present to, you're well on your way to huge success. And if you want to create a competing training company and do much more than I've ever done, there's your keys to success.
Oh, I love it. Maybe just Jim Rohn, he talks about, if you don't design your own life, chances are you're going to be working for someone else who has designed your life. And guess what they haven't designed for you? Not much.
Yes. So. Dave, it's been wonderful to be with you and your team once again. And I look forward to next time. You and I are good at staying in touch. So let's continue that.
Definitely.
For everybody, I wish you an incredible, extraordinary 2026 with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, with Avini, with your community. And just know that what the world needs right now is people that step up, claim an extraordinary life, and start doing their best to live it.
Let's go do this. Thank you. Sure love you. Bye.
All the best.